When I look at the evidence, I really believe Christianity never should have happened. It's the number one reason I actually believe in the Bible. I want to take a realistic look at lots of stuff, not just the Bible. Let's look at really where it happened, what the people were like, what would their behavior have been, how should they have reacted, and different things like that, and what really happened in the end. Fact is, if I just consider Israel by itself, it is this tiny, tiny little nation. It's like a pimple on an elephant. It is little. And to say that Israel was going to have such an impact on the world, or the world would be so worried about it, people would be thinking, you picked the little spot. So there's that. But more than that, even when we look at where all these events happened, or supposedly happened, we got a population of about 80,000 people. They say 60. Some say 80. I'll go with the top number. The fact is, we've got a stadium in the world that seats 150,000, the Mayday Stadium. Shoot, the one here in Dallas, AT&T Stadium, seats 80,000, so that would have fit every man, woman, and child involved in this story inside that stadium, and still left plenty of room. That's how many it seats. So I decided to pick a town like Santa Fe, New Mexico. Santa Fe, the reason I'm using that as an example is you've got roughly 89, 90,000 people, something like that. But more than that, you've got a town square. And if you've ever been there, a lot happens in the town square, and they set up booths. And anyway, that's more like the way things used to be. There was this public square, and that's where everything happened. It was, your market and where you went shopping and trading and telling stories. And it's where you went to court. It's where you went to school. It was everything. So when you went to the public square, that's what you got, was the local news. This person did this. This person did that. And the culture itself, if we look at the culture, oh my word, please tell me you can spot a Jew. It's like they wear different clothes. They cut their hair differently. They act differently. They've got things on their head. The Jewish culture was steeped in tradition. They did something for just about everything. And, all these festivals and stuff. But Herod, the king, had just finished building this massive temple. Just a huge, huge temple. Took so long to complete. This was a large construction project with a tremendous amount of anticipation. Everybody had some connection to the thing. It didn't matter if you were Jewish or not. That's where the jobs had been. That's where everybody had been working. This was decades going on. And then they start all these sacrifices and festivals, and all of this is happening at the temple. And so they were very Jewish. The local Roman government, they actually had a lot of problems with the Jews. So Rome had to intervene several times, and they would come in, kind of set law and order and get things where they were calmed back down, and then they'd go back to ruling the world or whatever it is they wanted to do. But there weren't sports or internet or phones, not the way that we think of sports. There were no movies, and everything you did was right here around the temple in the center of town. There was so much going on. But anybody who was somebody or did something wrong was known by everyone. If you were a musician or a playwright or whatever it was, a historian, a tax collector, they all knew you. You had a reputation, and that spread through the community. Again, these were people that didn't have things to do. Life was what you did, and you did it with everyone around you. So to finish that thought, everybody was connected in some way, shape, or form to one of 12 families or the Romans. There was an occasional traveler. I'm not saying there wasn't, but for the most part, this was 80,000 people that were related to each other. Imagine just the gossip and everything. But the rule was, hey, don't tick off the Romans. They're going to come back. They're not going to be happy. They're going to provide a whooping and all of this. So when you look at the Romans, let's consider their side of all of this. Rome was controlling so much of the world. They were busy doing their thing. They were building Rome. They were building other governments. They had all these other places. They did not want to have to deal with people. So any insurrection, which there'd been several in Israel, they wanted it put down, squelch it right away. Let's just cut the crap. So Rome didn't want to hear about problems from Israel. And that really became a contention or a contentious thing because things had bubbled up. The person that was there representing Rome had done a few things to really upset the Jews. At one point, they all laid down in the street and said, hey, cut our heads off. We're not going to listen to you. That made it all the way back to Rome. You get the idea. So Pilate, at this point, had to keep the Jews happy. The idea was Rome doesn't want to hear about it, and if they do, you're likely to be removed. So then we go into human behavior. What should we expect? When something happens, how should people act? What's their attitudes, their ethics, their norm? How would they react? Well, we've got this cult, for lack of a better term. We'll say cult-like behavior in that a bunch of people had started following someone. And this devout group, they gave up everything and followed this Jesus. Now, he attracted crowds everywhere he went. And you can go look in historical references outside of the Bible. Look up Josephus. Look up some of the Jewish historians. But the followers did this guy's bidding without question. Now, that's relative. I mean, yeah, there was a couple of questions, and you can read those in the Bible. But for the most part, face it, they did what he said. So there's plenty of biblical and extra biblical claims about miracles. In fact, the Jews said, well, we think you do it of the devil. So there was no denying that this cult leader, or whatever you want to call it, was outperforming miracles, and people knew it. So there was this buzz, like I said, crowds followed everywhere this guy went. But one of the problems was he presented a very different view of God than the governing Jewish church. What? Yeah, that was a problem. Not only that, in many ways, you could say that he absolutely claimed to be God. What? We just spent decades building a temple where we could go and be closer to God, and whoa, you just think about the culture. Claimed you didn't need to pay the church or sacrifice anything to be forgiven anymore. Whoa. Stop. You just think about it. And so he rocked their traditions. This was terrible. Think of, you've got this local hero or celebrity having it out with the government and church leadership in the public square. Tell me everybody didn't know about that. It's like, hide your children. The Romans are going to come. Life's going to change. So back to this governing church. I say almost a theocracy. Rome really had control, mostly, but there was a governing church that basically ran everything. The Sadducees and Pharisees didn't agree on much, except that, this Jesus clown needs to go away, evaporate, disappear, whatever. It's as though he was saying they didn't need to exist, and that's a problem. Telling the governing body over Israel, there's no need for you. You're not between them and God. People can now go directly to God through me. That's what he was saying. So they tried to snare him at every point. Their goal was to prove him wrong. That would be the easy way to make it go away. But you've got these 11 disciples. Yes, I understand there were 12 and one gave him up and on and on and on. But let's just look at what really happened here. 11 disciples. The leader gets arrested. It's like they grab him and they throw him in jail. The 11 disciples do exactly what I would expect them to do. And that is, whoa! He got arrested. I'm out of here. See ya. Done. Never believed it in the first place. Don't know who he is. I never really liked him anyway. They scattered. They ran. They denied they even knew him. So the governing church wants him dead, but, they wanted to capital punishment the guy. But they didn't have the ability to. Rome took that away. The Jews, part of this whole thing between Rome and Israel and all of that, they took away their ability to use capital punishment because they didn't feel that it met the Roman bar. And the Romans were known for killing people. Go figure that one out. But So the Jews had to turn him over to Rome. So they did all kinds of things which never should have happened. You can look it up, but there was a rule that you couldn't, try somebody in the same day or whatever. You couldn't, judge them or give them their punishment in the same day as the trial. You had to have a night to think about forgiveness and whatever. But the point is, they immediately ran 3 trials, which they weren't supposed to do. They turned him over to Rome because, they wanted him dead. Well, the Roman governor, Pilate's like, whoa, I want nothing to do with this. I wash my hands of it. Well, that wasn't going to work. They started throwing a fit like no other. And, Pilate, he didn't want this to boil out of the country because then he'd be removed. So finally, Pilate gives in. Romans were phenomenal at crucifixion. They didn't invent it. They perfected it. And so you've got to look at, Romans didn't make a lot of mistakes at killing people. We'll just say that. And some people even want to make that a debate. Like, oh, he didn't really die. No, he was up there and stabbed. And anyway, whatever. So public execution, something to understand, especially without TV. Everybody was there. Come on. This is the biggest happening in probably the last decade or two in Israel. And your family's not going. It's likely the biggest one to have ever happened in Jerusalem. And, obviously there was the 3 crosses and the 2 thieves and on. But, it's like the biggest celebrity in town is going to be killed live on Friday. And so who wouldn't be there? Shoot, this in Kentucky, 20,000 showed up to see Rainey Bethia in Kentucky. This was, it was just, people have been drawn to this forever. We'll just say that, show me some gore. What's the news say? If it bleeds, it leads. But there was this total mob at his trial. Everyone in town saw or was aware of this crucifixion that went on. So he gets killed. Okay. He's dead, whatever, and gets buried in a family tomb. Now, these tombs had big stones rolled in front of them, but you've got to remember the Romans. The Roman governor, again, Pilate was not going to have this bubble up. And there'd already been rumors, hey, this guy's raised the dead. Maybe he's going to, and I'm sure there was 1,000 things said. Either way, a Roman guard was placed outside the tomb. So he sends this guard, and you've got to understand, to be in the Roman Guard, you were pretty kick butt. That's like ninja level or whatever you want to call it, SEAL Team 6. I'm sorry, I don't know where you're at in the world, but the fact is, you didn't just make the Roman Guard because you raised your hand. So they were the elite of the fighting force, and there was punishment. If you fell asleep on the job, execution. You were now dead. So they go out, and what happened? Oh, they fell asleep. It doesn't say anything about they got executed. But when they woke up, the tomb was empty. And that brings us to a different part of the story when we talk about human nature and the Jewish culture. Even the Roman culture, or any culture back then, a couple of women discovered him? Hold on a minute. Women were not seen as brilliant, vibrant, strong, worthy of discussion. I don't know. Women were second class in the culture back then. I was going to say the Roman culture. No, they were second class. They were rarely written about or recognized. And so this would not have been the narrative the Jews would have wanted made up. Oh yeah, and the women found him because we were too chicken and didn't go. And no, that is so unlikely. And something happened. After that day, something really unbelievable happened. So much so that it brought a group of scattered, scared, dispersed followers back together and gelled them as a unit more than when he was alive. And think about that. So miraculous. Every one of them came back. I can't say it enough. They all were all over the place. And then they come back and they have this message that they have now seen him alive. You just, no. And they were so convinced that each of them committed their life to that mission to the point of death, and in fact died for it. So let's go back to the subject of miracles. The thing is, even after his death, they have 19 miracles in the first century attributed to the two apostles, Peter and Paul. Okay, it says that the others did some, and it says that not everything's written, but these 19, some of them were involving raising the dead and all kinds of other things. Only someone in a coma would not have known this. Your parents would have talked about it. Again, no TV, no internet, no movies. I don't need to go into it. This is the most interesting thing going on in life. And somebody would have told you, hey, another one of those weirdos raised somebody from the dead. More miracles kept happening. And more people believed. I mean, how am I going to believe someone else today outside of a first-hand witness that saw it happen and witnessed all of this? So their number grew very quickly, and there were witnesses everywhere. But even subsequent governments fought to shut this down. They just wanted to crush it and eliminate these clowns. Do you realize we don't find credible evidence of first century detractors saying, oh, they were all liars and, none of that's true and blah? It's not there. It's not there in Jewish history. We would have had the great sanatorium or the great insane asylum of all the Christians. Nope. What we have is historical evidence. You can look at Fox's Book of Martyrs. You can look at a lot of things. But by the year 325, there were 7 million Christians, and 2 million of them had been killed for their faith. Do you realize we got less evidence of landing on the moon? Most historical evidence, or historical events, we have less evidence than we do of Christ, the apostles, and all of that. Back to the Santa Fe argument. What if we landed a rocket right in the middle of Santa Fe tomorrow, unannounced? That news would circle the world. But tell me the people of Santa Fe wouldn't know, especially if it was announced and everyone was going to be there. So you think of Roswell. We really don't have much evidence that there was aliens that landed there. But the point is, everybody's heard about it. Sorry, again, if you're from a foreign country, maybe you haven't heard about all the alien stuff we have over here. But anyway, with everybody trying to shut it down, the locals, the people that were actually there, believed. Their numbers blew up. And 2,000 years later, we keep trying to deny it like we've got more evidence than they did, and we're more intellectually smart. We use acronyms for, roll on the floor laughing out loud. Most people were intellectuals back then because they didn't just get entertained. Now, a lot of them didn't read, and I understand all that, but they memorized books. I would just tell you, the more I've studied, the more convinced I am. Everything was against this movement and its people. They wanted them eliminated. The church did, the Jewish government did, the Roman government did. Human nature said, hey, leave me alone, go away. And the society was built against everything they were talking about. What they saw firsthand changed their lives forever. It changed the world forever. The more I search, the more convinced I am. I believe Jesus is alive. I believe he came as God. But it doesn't matter what I believe. The only question is, what about you?